Hello, I'm Sean Skinner. Welcome to the second edition of this video series or DVD entitled Stickhandling Beyond Belief. This video series was created to present a comprehensive and exhaustive research on the stickhandling skills and techniques. The research comes from the current body of videos, books, and instructors from all over the world. I have scientifically laid out a detailed progression of the individual skills and steps to stick handling. This video will provide the coach or player, whether professional or beginner, with a what to do and how to do it progression to attain the ultimate or professional level of stick handling skill. You can see the bibliography at the end of this video or DVD to see the depth of research over 10 years that has gone into the making of this series. The first edition of Stickhandling Beyond Belief was made in 1998. Since that time, new developments in the hockey stick have been made. I have gathered more stick handling tools and techniques. I have added over 250 shots to the series, and I have taken out the stick handling for roller hockey and made it a standalone tape or DVD. This video series has been organized into 5 parts. The first video, stick handling theory and preparation. The second, stick handling agility techniques. The third, the moves, fakes or deeks. The fourth video is entitled Stick Handling Drills for Coaches. And the fifth, dryland training for stick handling. In this first video on stick handling entitled Theory and Preparation, we're going to take a look at what makes the best hockey players, what is stick handling, why perfect practice is so important, writing a permanent motor program, some skating techniques needed for stick handling, the hockey stick, and stick handling areas and spaces. What makes the best hockey players? Skating or stick handling? Many have said skating, and while it is true skating is a foundational skill, stick handling is what truly separates the good from the best hockey players. Just think about it. At an elite level of ice hockey, AAA, Junior A, college, or professional, all players at these levels can skate extremely well. That's why they're there. But the best players at the elite level are the stick handlers. When was the last time you saw a highlight of a hockey player just skating? The greatest highlights are the awesome and unbelievable moves that lead to goals. Just look at the professional teams. Here's a list of players that you'll be familiar with. Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Mark Messier, Steve Yzerman, Pat LaFontaine, Eric Lindros, Mike Modano, Jaromir Jagr, Peter Forsberg, and of course Pavel Bure. All of these players are or were at the top of the NHL because of their stick handling skills. What is stick handling? Stick handling is easily understood when compared to basketball and the Harlem Globetrotters. In basketball, they work a combination of skills from a dribble in order to fake out an opponent. For a hockey player, stick handling is also a series of skills done from a dribble, but with a puck. Specifically though, stick handling is an agility skill. Now these agility skills combine into moves and fakes. Stick handling has been referred to as puck handling or puck control, but they do not mean the same thing. Stick handling is much more specific. Puck handling and puck control include any time a player is touching a puck, like passing, receiving, shooting, and face-offs, while stick handling refers to all of the agility skills and fakes. As you can see from the chart, the term stick handling is divided into 2 groups based on a progression of skills. The first is stick handling agility techniques. And the second is called the moves, sometimes referred to as fakes or deeks. Use these charts for a reference to better understand the progression of stick handling techniques and moves. In general, agility skills can start to be taught as early as 2 years old. We're not talking about strength training or weightlifting. We're talking about movement patterns. The individual is learning to write a motor control program to execute a body movement, like walking. At first, a child needs to think about every step, until enough practice makes the skill automatic. This leads us to our next point. Perfect practice makes perfect. It's very important to understand the motor learning process of how we acquire fine skilled movements before we start stick handling. This knowledge will enhance how you learn and teach, and it will explain why perfect practice is so important. You've all heard the slogan, practice, practice, practice makes perfect. It's not true. Perfect practice makes perfect. You can practice a skill for 8 hours, but if practiced wrong, then it'll be performed wrong. Whereas with just 2 hours of perfect practice, and more than likely you'll do the move right in the game. Here's why. Motor skill learning is an internal process of the central nervous system, leading to a permanent movement pattern. It takes repetitive practice of executing a skill at least 500 times to write a permanent motor program in your mind. And once that program is written, it is incredibly hard to change. Thus, if you learn a stick handling skill wrong, you can develop a wrong permanent movement pattern. You must pay strict attention to the detail of the technique, not the speed. If you get the proper technique, the speed will come later. Writing a permanent motor program. There are 3 phases of this learning process to write a permanent motor program: the cognitive, combination, and automatic. You are doing the cognitive right now. The cognitive or thinking phase is when you are watching or listening, in our case, by video demonstration, how to do the technique. While watching, in your mind you picture the technique along with verbal cues to write an initial motor program. The program at first is very crude and allows a player to just attempt the skill, hopefully moving in the right direction, but probably looking awkward. This is when attention to the detail of movement is important, and a trained professional needs to guide the correct pattern of movement to start writing a perfect program. The second, or combination phase, is much longer and can range from a few hours to several years, depending on the complexity of the skill. This is when the player begins to combine the correct movement patterns through repetitive practice. The player practices the skill to the point that it is performed accurately and consistently. This is when drill progression and feedback from the instructor about your technique are of the essence. Correction by videotape lets the player visually see how they look compared to the correct model. As the player continues to practice, less time is spent thinking about the technique. Thus, they feel the movements and can start to think about other things, like an oncoming player. During this phase, we eliminate extra movements and errors. As technique and form improve, then the speed, accuracy, coordination, and consistency improve. Athletes improve their performance during this phase to the point of mastery, which leads us to the third phase, or the automatic phase. The automatic or professional phase of learning comes when the player can perform the skill over and over with perfection at or near maximum speeds without thinking about the technique. The term automatic implies that the movement has very little conscious thought about the skill being done. In fact, if a highly skilled player thinks about the movements, it'll seriously disrupt performance. The automatic phase gives free time to think and to scan the ice, planning the best strategy. Now the player can consider the movements of other players and sticks around them, allowing their own movements to come from the motor control program already written, without thinking about the mechanics of the stick handling technique. Now that you're more familiar with the process of motor learning, you can begin to use this tape to visualize the proper techniques. Now we're going to take a look at a couple of skating techniques that are needed in order to stick handle. The first movement is called a shuffle stride, and the shuffle stride is sometimes referred to as scooting or side pumps. Just about every move in stick handling is done from this skating position. When I teach shuffle strides, I like to tell the player first to just wiggle as they're going down the ice. Wiggle with their feet side to side. What they're actually doing is making C-cuts. We do this by pointing the toe out to the side and coming around in a half circle. As we make this motion, pointing the toe out to the side and coming around in a half circle, it leaves the impression of a C on the ice. That's where it gets its name from. While making this movement, the weight is on the heel of the skate. As I come out and around, the weight is on the heel of the skate. There's two ways to do these C-cuts. The first way is to do the C-cuts strong and deliberate, or to make deep cuts into the ice. And it looks like this. The second way to do the shuffle stride is real quick. It'll be as if you're lifting the toe of the skate off the ice every time you make a cut. And that looks like this. The second skating technique needed for stick handling involves holding an inside edge for a half circle on one skate, and would look something like this. You start by picking your skate up and placing it behind the heel of the other skate. Do not cross over. Pretend that you have a puck on your stick and reach out to the side as far as you can, making a big sweeping half circle side to side. The second way to execute this technique is to reach out wide at an angle. Try reaching out wide side to side at an angle, stretching your leg out behind your body and bending your front knee, reaching out side to side. The third way to execute this technique is to practice by making small half circles as quick as you can side to side. It's as if you're hopping side to side. Now let's consider a few things about the hockey stick. First, should you play right or left-handed? Many misunderstand and just don't know how this is determined. Players usually walk into the store and ask for a stick. The attendant asks what hand the player is, which is usually right, and they hand them a right-handed stick. But the hand you play is actually determined by two things: your dominant hand and what feels best. When holding a hockey stick, players often let go with the bottom hand, leaving the stick in the top hand. And the top hand needs to be the strongest, the most coordinated hand. Usually your dominant hand is the right, which means you hold the top of the stick in your right hand. This makes you a left-handed hockey player. This does not mean that every right-handed individual should play hockey left-handed. You must also take into consideration what feels best for you. Just keep in mind that the top hand controls most of the stick handling and the slap shot, while the bottom hand is involved with toe control, turning of the stick over, and the wrist shot. I'd like to make further comment here on this dominant hand should be on top. It's interesting to note that when the Russians started hockey in the late 40s and early 50s, that the entire team played hockey left-handed because they were all right-handed individuals, being the dominant hand on top. It's also noted that there are more left-handed players in Canada, left-handed hockey players, right-handed individuals, and in the United States, there's a lot of players who are playing right-handed as a right-handed player because we have stigmatism to softball, being a lefty. But as a general rule, 90% of the time, the dominant hand should be on top, and if you're right-handed, then you should hold the stick left-handed. It's not always that time, it's a 90% rule. Some of the tests that they do on players to determine their hand is, first we have players shoot with the stick in the left hand and the right hand after we've educated them just that, you know, about the Canadians, about the Russians, that being left-handed is not a weak thing. And we see how they shoot, and they feel how they feel with the stick. And then also we can take some tests here as to sweeping with a broom. We'll ask a player to grab a broom, and we'll see how they hold the broom and how they sweep. And generally, if this is the way you sweep, that's the way you'll hold the hockey stick. For me, again, I'm right-handed, and I'm holding it as a left-hander. And then also shoveling. If they were to shovel dirt or snow, how do you pick up the shovel and scoop and shovel? The players will tend to do that the same hand that they should play in ice hockey. What type of stick should you use? There are all types of sticks. Junior sticks, senior sticks, aluminum sticks, graphite, or wooden sticks. The key when choosing a stick is to have a stick that is light as possible. It must be light enough to control the puck with one hand. Aluminum sticks are the lightest and preferred by younger players because it's easier to handle the puck. Aluminum sticks have some things that need to be considered though. First, they have less flex than the wooden and graphite sticks. Also, you do not feel the vibrations up and down the shaft as well, reducing the feel for the puck. And players spend a lot of time replacing the blades. Often they come to the rink needing additional equipment to heat the blade. I tell players if they spend as much time working on their stick handling as they do changing their blades, they might get somewhere someday. Aluminum sticks also cost a lot more than the wooden sticks. Younger players may need a junior stick. The junior sticks have narrower shafts and are lighter, which help them also handle the puck better. Senior sticks